Hello, everybody. Welcome to TLDChat Monday morning. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Today we have a fantastic guest with us today. I'll be introducing Jeff Batt, and we'll be talking with him shortly. But before we jump into that conversation, just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about TLDChat. We are the Training, Learning, and Development Chat Community and Conference. We're here every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and 4 p.m. UK time. I don't see that we have any of our UK representation yet, so I'm afraid we're going to have to not start the show. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we have Vico on the line.
Well, that's good enough then. Hey, if we've got, as long as we've got at least one person from outside of the U.S. and Canada, then that counts, and so we're good to go. All right, Vico, perfect, fantastic. So I'll carry on. I hope everybody's been having a great weekend and looking forward to the week. Today is Monday, and as many of the regulars know, Mondays we like to talk about you. We like to focus on you, the center of everything that you do as a training, learning, and development professional. And on the days that we do have a guest on Mondays, we still like to gear the conversation in that direction, but we will most likely go in many, many other tech directions as well, and talk about other topics outside of that. But that's normally pretty easy to do. Most of the conversations we have focus on things that you are interested in if you have anything to do with the work of training, learning, and development. So it's a pretty generic day on a Monday, but it's a great way to kick off the week. It's good to see everybody here. Quick background for today and about my background and where I'm at. I did a road trip with my daughter, as I do every August, to bring her back out to school in Iowa. And I stay at my brother's place while I get her settled. Unfortunately, the car broke down on Saturday, and so we had some misadventures along the way. And so now I'm actually in the process of trying to sell a car also before I catch my flight back on Tuesday night. So interesting times, but just part of life and road tripping across the country. So good times, lots of fun things going on. But if you're curious about why I don't have my microphone and not my usual background and everything, that's currently what's going on in my life. But I don't think anybody wants to hear much more about that. What we want to do is talk to our guest. Jeff, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good to see you. So I think we have to kind of inform everybody just a little bit about how you and I first met. Why don't you tell the story? Where did you and I first connect?
Yeah. Well, that kind of starts my venture in e-learning. Is actually the first year of e-learning is when I met you. I had just started a job called Rapid Intake, and Rapid Intake it's been a while, but they used to host a conference. They also they had like a software called Unison that was an e-learning authoring tool, and then they hosted a conference every year called DevCon. So eLearning DevCon, and the first year that I actually helped out, you were the keynotes. And so I remember kind of my first venture into e-learning. This was a while ago, but my first venture into e-learning, you were the keynote of that, and I got really pumped about it. So I'm still in the industry, so I'm still doing things, and but I think it's been over 10 years that we met.
It's been a long time. I was just back at the event this year. Speaking again, and it was fun. I don't know if I actually did the math with anybody, but I think it has been probably almost 10 years. Actually, it's probably been more, but maybe I don't know.
No, I think it has. I think it was 2007 is when I started with Rapid Intake. So I think it was 2007
that year. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, a lot of stuff started happening in 2007. That's for sure. But that was a great event. Still is a great event. It's not the same event. It's run by somebody else this year. Yeah. But those of you that have been are interested in it, you can hit up folks in the chat. and get more information if you want. But so we met there, and you worked for Rapid Intake, and Rapid Intake has gone through some acquisitions and lots of changes over the years. So where have you ended up? What are you up to now?
Well, I was with Rapid Intake for about 7 years. Went through from sales to actual developments, helping out with them, and then towards they got bought out by a different company, and then I actually ventured out to eLearning Brothers and worked with eLearning Brothers for about a year. They were quite small. They're quite large right now, but they were quite small when I started. I was employee number 5, and my job was to actually build the template library. So a lot of the templates, early games from Storyline, Edge Animate, different things like that. I went in and I built a lot of those. But I was only there for about like a year and a half, got a different job opportunity at my church headquarters, actually. And so I ventured over there, and I manage the learning development team over there. So all instructional designers, developers for all the developments or e-learning courses that we create. And then I do a lot of side stuff. Learningdojo.net is my side stuff. I do a lot of tutorials, trainings, go to a lot of different conferences, speak at a lot of different conferences. And I'm also always playing around with different templates and different things that I can create. And so I'm all over the place and do a lot of custom development. Basically, I don't have a whole lot of free time is what I'm saying.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So what are you, so what's the current hot thing that you're kind of looking at right now that is on your radar? Since you do these templates and you work with these tools as a developer, instructional designer, and you can create all of this stuff, what's currently caught your interest?
Right now, it's actually been a lot of interactive video. I was looking at a lot of video at different conferences, different interactive video tools that are out there, and they were some of them are so expensive, some of them were completely, out of the even, a normal person's budget. So I'm like, is there a template that I can actually create in order to create this interactive video? And it's really got me excited. I've been working on this. I have another developer that's been helping me as well, but I've been working on this interactive template that's just really got me excited. That is very flexible. I'm a code person. I like to get into the code. I like to work with the code. I'm not afraid of that. But I'm trying to set it up in a way, and this is really where my foundation of Rapid Intake comes into play, because their philosophy with the tools was to set it up in a way where people can actually go in and easily customize it, but to also give them the code that they can go in for the developers to actually extend it, go beyond the normal capability. And so that whole philosophy from Rapid Intake has still followed me. And that's why I liked working at eLearning Brothers too, is because they do the same thing. But I still do that here as well. As when I develop this, I'm not developing it to take the code and keep the code for myself. Awesome. I'm developing this to share the code. So
are there any plans for it? So if you create this template, I'm certain that there are lots of people in the chat and in the community that would be very, very, very interested in that. So kind of what are your plans?
Yeah. Well, Vico is actually the one that got me who's on the chat right now. He's the one that got me to do this. We were at the last conference, Focus On, and he's like, you got to create this template. And I'm like, well, I thought about it. He's like, no, he's like, you got to create it. And so I went in and I started working on it. And right now my plans are just to get it to alpha phase, to share it with some people and to see, how it goes from there. And I've also been working on another framework as well, like a full-on framework that's responsive HTML that allows you to go in and create custom courses as well. So I'm excited about the interactive video thing, but I think the framework thing will be awesome as well. So, but I think the plans are to eventually sell it, to have people download it. Sorry, I touched the mic there. But download it, be able to customize it and adjust it. Then eventually even look into making a tool.
Awesome. I was just going to say that would be very, very, very cool. So if anybody is really interested in geeking out on that stuff, you can reach out to Jeff and see if you can get maybe an early view or something, or if you want to help, right? I'm sure you're always looking for people to lend a hand as well in the process.
Yeah, any coders that want
Yeah, because
to help with that, I'm more than open
to
to
me
talking
that
with them.
sounds like something that is actually, going to be needed for sure, and be very useful for a lot of folks here. So let's talk a little bit about your the JavaScript dojo, or the Ninja Shop, or that stuff. So what? First of all, what's the URL? Where can people find it?
It's learningdojo.net. And if you go there, right now, all my training is actually free. So what I wanted to do, I used to charge for it, but I wanted to see how many people I could actually reach. And I just love teaching. So I just offered all of my courses for free. You have Storyline, you have, let's see, Bootstrap's on there, jQuery Mobile, although that's kind of going away a little bit, but it's still there. You have various how to make interactive video courses as well. So I don't know, it comes down to, I just like teaching. That's part of the rapid intake background as well. Being involved with eLearning DEF CON and stuff. I just grew to just love presenting and love teaching. And even when I was at eLearning Brothers, I was still doing teaching on the side as well. And so Learning Dojo kind of evolved from that, just helping people really, and that's, become a ninja, just become expertise at what they're doing with the e-learning development tools. But going back to what I was talking about before, I want to see this industry push a little bit further beyond your standard, click to go to the next page type of interactions. I want to see them exploring things like Bootstrap, or exploring things like, AR, VR, different things like that, which I think some people are. But I think as a standard, we go back to just click to reveal, or click to show something, or click to go to the next page. It's I don't know. I think we can do better. I come from a web background. That's what I got my degree in. And I think I look at what the web realm can do, and I look at what e-learning is doing. And I think I don't know, we need to, like Mark Lassoff says all the time, we need to raise the bar, and we need to venture out into these different tools, and not be afraid of code. Or even if you don't learn to code, just learn the principles, or just how to guide other coders in order to create these things that are out of the box. That's something that pushes the industry a little bit further, I think.
What do you see? So let's dig in a little deeper here on the, as a teacher and somebody that does like to, connect and teach this kind of stuff. What do you see as the roadblock for people in our industry to get into this? Like, why aren't more people learning it or dealing with it? And then if it's a technical thing, what is it that keeps them from upping their game, right? We all want the game to be upped. We all want to raise the bar, but what do you see is the roadblock that's keeping us from getting there?
No, I think it's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer to that specifically, but so one other thing that I'm doing is actually I'll be teaching a class at BYU this fall, and so I've been thinking a lot about that. Is how to take instructional designers that aren't necessarily coders, but to help them understand principles of coding, and how my goal is to actually show them how they're actually using coding even in the standard learning tools. And so they're learning about, there's 3 different elements that I like to think of with coding. And there's 3 different core parts. So any tool that you're going to go learn, any coding language that you're going to go learn, there's really simple principles that go across all of them. There's, working with the different elements. So if I go pick up Storyline, there's a lot of different shapes, images, videos that I can actually use. And so being familiar, or getting familiar, first of all, with what those elements are. The second thing is style, just how to stylize it, how to make it, my own, how to customize it, and different things. And then the last thing is actually functionality. So, okay, when I click on this, what happens? And part of that functionality is like conditional coding and other things. So even if you're working with PowerPoint, you're working with different elements. You're working with different styles as well. You're working, like if you go change the color, well, that's the same thing inside of CSS. If you're going to change a color of an element, you do that inside of CSS with those same like background color elements. If you're going to change it to like a gradient or something like that. It's just a matter of knowing what the syntax is in order to actually use that in whatever tool that you're learning. And same thing, I've been learning a lot of iOS development, and that's the same thing there. Is iOS has a lot of like default elements there, and you need to become familiar with those elements when you're learning how to do iOS development. And then you have to become familiar with how to stylize those elements to make it, look not out of the box or look at how you want it to look. And then you have to be familiar with how to make it function, how to make it work and things. So I don't know. I think going back to your previous question, I think it's just pointing those things out would allow them to say, hey, you're already working with some coding elements. There's in real life, there's a lot of those coding elements. And that's really what I want to teach a little bit more.
Yeah,
is how you recognize the coding elements in real life.
It's interesting. I asked the question because this conversation comes up a lot, and everybody's got their points that we're, seeing in the chat. And, most of us that are here and hang out in this community, I think to some extent engage with the tech to a certain point. Maybe not all of us, but there is that sense in our industry, I think, that the best I can equate it to is the idea that instructional design, right? Doing instructional design doesn't require you to be technical because you're relying on the technical people to take your designs and execute on what you've come up with, and you're relying on somebody else. So like the best metaphor I can think of would be an architect versus a contractor, right? Like an architect, more than likely probably doesn't know how to weld or doesn't swing a hammer and doesn't go out and actually build the stuff he designs, but he just designs it and just understands maybe the physics or whatever the technology that goes with it. I don't know. Maybe the architect contractor is not a good metaphor, but I think we've had.
Yeah. No, I think that's, I think that's it though. I think the architect has to understand it enough in order to design it. And I think that's the relationship that I like, not being an instructional designer myself, being more of a developer. I think I work the best with instructional designers that understand the coding concepts, even if they can't do it themselves, but they understand the basics enough to actually direct it or design it. It's those, I have a harder time with instructional designers that are, they create for a template, they create like a text box that has this much, and then, 3 different options, one that has this much, one that has this much, and one that has like a very little. And when the space is not available for that amount, it's someone who understands those kind of basic, even design layouts, UX layouts, or different things like that, or even coding, what can be done, what can't be done, are usually the ones that push it a little bit further. I'm thinking of one in mind that I work with all the time. She is always looking at different, what different tools, what different languages are out there. She doesn't like to stick with the standard tools. She likes to look at like what other things can be done. But she's always the one that's pushing the box a little bit further. And I think as a developer, I like that direction. And so I'm just the one to figure out how it can be done. She gives me the overall vision, the architects, and then I go in and I actually make sure.
So where's a good place to start? Where would you recommend if somebody was here hanging out today and they want to, commit to giving it a shot? Where's a good place to go learn how to get that ball rolling and to start coding?
To start coding, there's a lot of different sites out there that you can do. So lynda.com, you can do Code Academy as well. Learntoprogram.tv, Mark Lassoff, he's in the industry, has a lot of good ones out there as well. I don't have a lot of basic ones out there right now. I'm looking to eventually get in a lot of basic coding. But I think I'm going to be, as far as training going forward, I'm going to be trying to focusing on how to actually do coding within the e-learning industry, not specifically coding for a website, but coding more for how do I create like an interactive game or something. or just basically a e-learning course all in HTML as well. So I don't know. But as far as just learning coding principles, one course that I actually took that was actually pretty good was Apple's. If you go to developer.apple.com, if you're just really new to Apple or even any type of programming, they have just a intro to programming course that talks about what commands and sequences are and variables and conditions. And so you can learn the terms.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know if anybody's in the chat that can seek that out and paste that link in there to that, but I have heard about that course as well, and I've heard great things about it. So yeah, I would encourage people to go check that out as well.
Yeah. See, and I think it applies back, even if you're not going to do coding, even if you're just going to stick with Storyline, Captivate, which is fine. Those tools are still great for what they create, but it helps you back in those tools. It helps you learn what a variable is. It helps you learn how to work with different elements. It helps you even hiding and showing things. I remember looking at instructional designers who didn't know code at all, didn't know really Storyline much at all. And I looked at one of his templates that he created, and he was using the layers inside of Storyline, but instead of hiding the layer on the base layer, and it's just a simple little toggle button click, he was actually creating a new rectangle, hiding it over, like creating a white rectangle to cover the base layer. And I'm like, come on, like there's some simple stuff that you can do. I think it will help you with variables and conditions and just understanding the logic back with any tool that you create or any tool that you use. And I think it's really not the tool that you use. It's really kind of understanding that logic and understanding how to work with the tool. Because even if you're using Storyline or Captivate, you still can create some awesome stuff. It's just, you have to have that basic foundation.
Yeah, you definitely need to know the basics, and I think it's important to do so. And I would, I would say, I think I would take a different approach to your colleague that did the cover over it, right? I mean, I think I give him props for doing it, right? I give him props for going as far as okay, this is what I know how to do, and it solves my problem. So I'm just going to do that and get the job done, right? I mean, the creativity is in how you solve problems is a lot of the big part of coding, right? And if you only know certain tricks and if you can only do certain things and you need to get the job done and you're able to do it, in a lot of cases, that's pretty darn good, right?
Yeah, I go back and look at my old code, and that's exactly what I think. With my knowledge at that time, this is what I tried to figure out, and I hack my way into doing stuff, and I know a lot better now. But yeah, so it is a good step forward. I would prefer them trying it out rather than them coming and asking me questions for every single thing.
It helps the learning process too, right? So in my own instance, I can remember when I first started learning coding was because I had to, there weren't a lot of e-learning developers that knew code, so I kind of had to teach myself. I was either in Macromedia Director and trying to script Lingo, or I was doing Authorware and needed to code in Authorware at the time. I can't remember which one, but I learned the magic of the if-then statement, and that just blew my mind. That alone opened up my whole entire world.
Yeah.
But my code was pages and pages and pages of if-then statements. And then when I had somebody, I was so proud of my work, and I just thought I had built this thing, and I was so proud of it, and it worked, and I could click on things and they would move, and it was just awesome. And a real coder, I was showing him what I did, and he was like, oh, well, why didn't you just put that in a loop? Or, he started rattling off all these other things, and I'm like, what? And he's like, well, let me show you how to do that. And he took all my if-then statements, right, and wrapped them into I don't remember exactly what he called it at the time. It's been a long time since then. Yeah, I think it was a for loop or something. He was like, yeah, this one could be,
like a for loop,
and so he took my 50 lines of code and wrapped it back down into like 10 lines of code, and it basically did the same thing. And I was like, wow, then that blew my mind. And so then my next project, I tried really hard to, keep it really concise and go from there. So, it's just part of that learning process. You just kind of stumble across stuff the more projects you do.
I think that's the key, though, is I think we need to keep trying. We need to keep doing it. And just that's part of my coding. Whenever I learn, like, again, I'm learning iOS right now. And it's just, I spend a lot of time just trying to figure something out. Just, okay, I try it one way. Okay, that's not working. I try it a different way. That's not working. And I think a lot of people give up. I'm sure if they just don't continue, or they just don't, once they run into an issue, they just stop, or they just go find help and have someone else figure it out for them instead of them trying to pay the price to figure it out. I think if they pay the price, they'll actually know it a lot more. I love books like The Compound Effect is one of my favorite books from Darren Hardy. And he's talking about, in order to actually make any type of drastic change. And so learning to code or learning any tool, even like Storyline, is a drastic change. It's not something you're going to expect to know within a 4-hour time period. Even if you go to like an all-day conference or something, you'll know a lot more than you did before you went to that. So they're still beneficial. But that's the key, is afterwards, what you do with that. So going back to your office and actually, trying it out a little bit, trying out a principle without an instructor there, trying to figure it out. And if you're doing the work, I think that's really where it's gonna stick more. There's also another book called Make It Stick, and I think that they cover that principle is really, after a certain amount of time, going back to what you learned and quizzing yourself or testing yourself is the thing that will make it stick a little bit more. So after you've gone to this conference, you've learned some Storyline stuff, going back to your office, trying that Storyline stuff in different scenarios is really where you're going to learn and master the tool. Whether it's coding, whether it's Storyline or anything like that, it's just you got to be persistent. You got to go in and do the small, simple actions over time, and that's really what's going to create mastery over time.
I think it's a great it's a great direction, I think, for everybody to move into in general. Jeff, I don't know if you've watched our little live stream collaborative conversation here in the past, but at about the halfway mark, I like to take a quick little break and give you a chance to take a look at the chat, maybe answer some of the chat questions and whatnot, while I thank our regulars for being a part of the show. So let me do that real quick before we jump in. It'll give everybody too a chance to take in what they've heard a little bit. If you need to do some searches for some links that you want to share with everybody in the chat, please feel free to do that as well as I go through here, and just say thank you to everybody for being a part of what we do here. Oh, and now I can't find a screen to share, so I guess I won't worry about that. We have a great way for you all to continue to be a part of TLDC and TLDChat, and help us to continue to drive forward the experience of TLDC, and that is through membership. Our new membership program is up and available to sign up for. It basically comes out to less than 75 cents a day, I think, for these TLD chats, and we're always going to keep TLD chat free. We think that's an important part of providing value back to the community. But the more this grows, and the more we want to create more valuable content for everybody in the community, and give everybody more opportunities to take advantage of the existence of the community, the little bit more infrastructure that it takes to support it. And so the membership helps us take care of that. So cost, infrastructure, people's time, effort, all of the things that are required to make good value added back to the community. And we do feel like there's a lot of value to be had here, and we appreciate everybody's help in that. So check it out. click on the Join Us link on tldc.us, and you can get registered there. If you do a full year membership, you also can get a discount on the event coming up in January 29th and 30th in Phoenix, Arizona. So you can check that out as well if you're interested in attending. We've got some great things planned there. But boy, in general, when we were talking about this, we started to realize that doing this every single day for, Monday through Friday anyways, at the end of the year, you're looking at, 250 plus sessions, right? If you consider each one of these conversations as valuable as maybe going and sitting in a conference session at an event, $150 for the whole entire year for 250 sessions, really, and conversations and networking and live collaborative conversations. That's a screaming deal, and that's some significant value. So the tech, like Crowdcast has allowed us to come a long way in how we can connect and provide value to our peers and get better at what we do. So if becoming a little bit more tech savvy is a great part of advancing your career, then we want to be here to help you do that. And that's why we have the fabulous and wonderful Jeff Batt here with us to talk about that kind of stuff, because he's a pro. He's a tech pro. Totally gets this stuff.
I still
I think that's
still
the
got a
best
lot to learn
part,
myself
right?
as well. But
yeah, when you can connect with somebody that's still interested in learning the same thing you are, but they're a little bit further along, or maybe even a bit further along than you are, that's a great place to be at, right? Watching them learn because they're still excited about it, and being connected to people as they're learning and going through the process as well. There's a lot of value in that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting thing, is there's always something new. Like, that's again why I go back to, I think I would get bored out of my mind if I was just creating slide after slide. And so I just want to, what excites me is being able to explore something different, to, figure out how to create an iPhone application or how to create an AR application or something like that. It's just the technology is so exciting. It's so always improving that I think it's exciting for me to try to figure out how to get into that realm. Now, I always hear people saying, well, we shouldn't be, fast. We should be fast followers, but we shouldn't be on the bleeding edge type of technology, which is true. But I think we should always be testing the bleeding edge. And then once it gets to a more stable spot, then incorporate it in more of our, global initiatives and stuff. But so I don't know. I love just playing around with tech. Plus, it gives me an excuse to tell my wife that I need to go buy an iPhone.
The new tech is out. I
definitely.
I have to do some testing on this, honey. So I absolutely need to go pick up some gear. Yeah, it's business, right? It's an expense.
For business.
Right? Yeah, that's. Yeah. You're right. Right. Research.
It's
yes,
research.
That's always my favorite. Right.
Then she gives me the eye roll that she's got down.
I believe I've seen that eye roll plenty of times, so totally understood. Yeah. Oh, excellent.
She's even got my daughter doing it too, so
Yes. Yeah. Michael gets it. Yep. It's a universal thing. I think I'm not sure if it's taught in school or if it's genetic or what, but yeah, the eye roll is a classic. So you mentioned VR and AR. Is that way outside of everybody's tech realm just now? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is it something that everybody just sort of needs to be looking at, or should we be in it right now trying to learn it in more detail?
Yeah, I think we should be looking at, but I think there's a lot that we can actually be doing. To give a shout out to Michael, he does a lot with it. I think he's a great resource to see as far as like 360 video or other things that they can do. I think that's extremely. I don't know if you cut out there.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay, sorry, your video cut out, but I think it's extremely applicable inside of the learning realm. Think about a 360 video of someone putting on a headset and going into the same environment as what a person, a technician or something like that would be in. I think that, just even exploring, looking around and seeing what people are doing would be extremely helpful as well. VR, being able to go through different simulations, go through different areas. I get more excited about AR though. I think AR really is, to me, the most exciting because it takes VR, you go into a different realm. And so in a way, you're still kind of simulated. I know people might disagree with this, but it's still simulated. It's not as realistic. I mean, they're getting better, and I think it's going to get more and more better. And I think it's, for gaming, it's incredible. But AR just takes the elements that we currently have in this world and adds an additional layer onto it. So imagine going into you're a new employee, grabbing out your phone, and what Apple's doing with the iPhone in the next version is going to be incredible, because you can just start, putting your phone around and seeing additional elements that actually pop up and getting more information about it. So even going to the store and having, some information pop up about that product that you're looking at, and maybe even an interaction, I think that would be incredible to do that type of thing. I don't think everyone's going to be holding their phones up all the time. So I'm hoping that they figure out the Google Glass type of thing instead of having a little piece here, but having like actual glasses that you can have additional information on there. But I think it's definitely something that's within reach, because as I've been learning iOS development, I've realized a lot of Swift code, which is what you do to program, or what you use to program iOS Swift applications, is very similar to Java. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask, right? So we talk a lot about asking people, okay, let's up the game, let's raise the bar. JavaScript is a great place to start because it's got the web elements to it. You can do some brief e-learning with it. For those people that are just starting out, they may look at VR and AR and say, oh my gosh, now we're into VR and AR. Am I too far behind the curve to even care at this point? Is there a path of transition, like if they learn JavaScript, for example, as a starting spot, right? Is that going to be applicable, and can they use those skills moving into these newer technical elements like AR and VR?
Yeah, I think it definitely is, because you look at tools like Unity, you look at tools like iOS, you look at even Android. It goes back to our previous conversation. If you understand those coding principles, you'll be able to learn the syntax of different coding languages and be able to use or pick up other languages. I mean, I don't have all code memorized. In fact, when I build iOS applications, most of the time I'm just Googling, hey, how do you do this? And then looking at the code and then copying and pasting it and trying to apply it to my application as well. But so if you understand those coding principles, like just what variables are and conditions and other things like triggers and actions and stuff, then you can start applying that inside of other tools. And when you get back into things like AR, VR, the kind of tools that you use to create that type of stuff, besides the visual stuff is more 3D modeling, stuff like that. But as far as the interactive stuff, that's Java or JavaScript with Unity. And so you can definitely, that's within realm. If you start learning those principles, that's within realm for anybody to actually go in and pick up, I think.
Even Swift.
Swift is very familiar.
It ends up looking the same. Right? No, I was just going to agree with you a lot. You like to kind of get back to my sort of anecdote earlier. I mean, just learning what an if-then statement is and how it functions is valuable in all languages, right? Because I think most languages have some sort of if-then statement architecture that you can use. And right. Yeah. There's all sorts of the different languages and different structures and different ways you can use it, and it's very logical, right? I mean, that was the reason why I gravitated towards it. Once you get to the more advanced, the for loops and all that kind of stuff, then you kind of have to start do a little bit more deeper thinking to figure it out. But once you get it, you get it. The if then is just, it's spelled out for you. It's right there. But that's also why it ends up taking many lines of code to do very simple things. but you can read it. You can almost read it, and you can watch it drop into the different layers as you go through it, and as you're doing those loops. So just having that basic understanding and knowing that that coding isn't outside of your reach. I think doing something simple and just building your confidence is worth its weight in gold alone, right? Then you're not so fearful of it.
Yeah. It goes back to that, again, back to the compound effect thing. It's just his equation to making large leaps and bounds is small, simple steps done consistently over time equals the greatest reward. So if you think about it, this coding, just learning how to do an if statement, if then statement, but not forgetting it after that, going and applying it. So done consistently over time is what really is going to get you to that coding realm. I think it takes as long as people realize. I think if they're continually doing or learning, okay, what is the if statement? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And just asking all these questions and trying different things out, I think eventually they'll get to it where they're starting to do more things than they realize. And that's kind of how I was when I first learned how to program. It was back in the Flash days at Rapid Intake. I had never touched code before then. But I remember I just so fascinated by it. Like I spent, I was up until 2 a.m. sometimes just learning how to, when you click a button in Flash, how to actually make it animate. And I got so excited when that happened. So I just, that curiosity, but just being, that's doing those small steps over time, I think is going to make
it's fantastic. Yeah, I remember the same thing. I remember the very first time I was able to make something happen on the computer screen myself because of my code. And it's an exceptionally empowering feeling, right? It's like, it just kind of opens up this whole world. Like now I have the power, right? I can do stuff. I can figure out how to make magic happen.
When I click you move.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't even matter how simple it is, right? Just that interactivity of clicking on something and making it drag, or having an idea and being able to execute it is extremely powerful. In general.
Yeah, and I think there's enough information out there. It's really just, okay, what do I want to do? What type of tools do I want to get into? And then just, going and purchasing a course. I have a lot of courses on Udemy as well. Going and purchasing a course on Udemy or finding a free tutorial. I mean, there's a lot of links in the chat as well of different coding tutorials that you can do. And just, spending a couple hours a day just learning how to code or learning what a variable is, or researching or trying things out, or even within Storyline, if you stick with Storyline, then just trying different interactions that are beyond just, animating something like a conditional coding drag and drop or something like that. I mean, that to me, that goes beyond just the static page turner and making it more interactive. And once you understand those concepts, you can then go into iOS developments. You can then go into Android developments. Or even if you don't, you're understanding it enough that you can then hire someone from like Odesk, which I think is called Upwork now, but someone who knows the coding, but you're able to direct them a little bit better. And I've guided a lot of developers in my career, and the thing that has helped me the best is when I understand the coding and enough that I know what I'm asking for, and then I specify it enough that they're able to actually go in and do that with very minimal back and forth, basically. So it's very beneficial whether you're doing the code or not.
I think it's a great point. And I think probably that's the most important point, because I don't think any of us are saying that instructional designers and everybody in our industry needs to go out and become like an expert coder and that's their specialty and that's all they do. It's do it enough so that you have a healthy respect for the work and that you understand how to communicate with that person or that team of people that's going to be doing the work. And I think at the end of the day too, that just understanding that piece and that logic also can't help but make you a better designer, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. So if you understand some designing principles inside of like web development, for example, you can take those principles inside of eLearning. One of those principles is the MVC model. So MVC, Model View Controller, is what it stands for. And so one thing that I've done with that is I've realized the power of that inside of e-learning. When you actually separate those contents, so M stands for model, which is kind of like your data. So taking your data, your text, your content, and separating it from the actual style and functionality. And so typically what I've done in the past is I've stored like the data, the text, and everything inside of a JSON file, which is just a way to structure your content. And now that content is in a very standard way that you can then take that content and apply it in different variations. So you can have it as part of an application. You can have it as part of it as a web application. You can have it as, as part of video or something like that. There's a lot of different variations for it. But so model view controller, you're separating those content items. And then now it allows me to actually go in and do a lot more with the functionality. So as like I mentioned, I actually during the day worked for my church headquarters. So we're all over the world. And so one thing that by separating the model view and controller that we've been able to do is we've been able to translate our courses a lot better. So instead of creating several different versions of Storyline, for example, and having several different languages, we have one course, one project file, and then all of the text, all of the translated text is separated into JSON files. And we have a drop-down box up at the top that when you select the drop-down box, you can actually select a different language. And then it will stay exactly where you're at, but it will load the entire course with the new language. So I'm not creating several project files. I'm separating the model, the data of the course from the actual view of what it's stylized to be. And now I can do more with that data, and I can swap it out back and forth. But it's just understanding that web philosophy of the model view and controller has allowed me to apply it inside of eLearning.
I love that. And I haven't heard it called model view and controller before, but I've always just referred to it as, the design, the code, and the content, I think is how I've described the web. And I always remember telling people, why can't our e-learning tools be that way, right? Why can't there be that separation, right? Like you got the code in one area, you've got, the design elements in another area, and you may even have separate people working on those elements, right? Somebody's designing the content, somebody's designing the, the design, somebody is designing the code, the interactivity, and making it happen. And then you just bring those three elements together. But when they're modular like that, now you've got this ability to do some quick changes and keep the design exactly the same, but load it with new content very, very, very easily and quickly. Last week we had Melissa Milloway from Amazon on, and she was talking a lot about modularity. So for those people that have seen that conversation, this ties in really nicely with what she was talking about.
Yeah, I actually watched that. It was really good, really interesting information that she had. But yeah, it's very similar. So if you understand that, you're not reduplicating things. You're basically keeping the model separate from the actual view. And then not only can you use that model inside of a Storyline course, if they allowed you to, load several languages inside of one course, that'd be nice. But you're able to use it inside of eLearning, but you're also able to use it inside of like print. And so we also, in different areas of the world, we still have to worry about print because not a lot, some areas don't have internet. So taking that same content, instead of duplicating it, having one source file of the data and being able to apply it to print, being able to apply it to eLearning, being able to apply it to mobile. I think the other concept is called COPE, where it's create once and publish everywhere. So you create the content once inside of JSON, and then you publish it in all the different things. And I think, so again, going back to that, is you understand those basic foundations, and if you bring it into your e-learning development, I think that's what really will benefit this e-learning realm, is understanding what's already out there in the web development realm, what the mobile development realm, and seeing how we can apply it inside of the e-learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we've all been going, or at least trying to go for the last, few years, right? We see what gets done out there on the web, and then we figure out how we can utilize, those same elements for the work that we do.
Yeah. I think it's going to be the same thing with AR and VR. So see what's being done with AR and VR and seeing how we can apply it in the learning realm. But going back and understanding those principles, I think it can be done. Yeah. I think we can do it. And going back to raising the bar, I think that's the way that we raise the bar, is just breaking out of these standard click to go to the next page courses and exploring what other possibilities
are. See what comes next. Well, as we start to draw close to the end of our hour, what are some good parting words or places you can share with our audience?
So I think what really I get passionate about is going and exploring and testing different things and exploring. I love when I go to like different conferences and I see like the different samples that people have, and they've done something different. They've gone and they've created some interaction. The example that's popping in my head is I remember going and seeing what Michael had done with a comic book in Edge Anime, yeah. And he just took something different and applied it to learning. And then I really think we need to keep doing that type of thing, or just exploring more AR, VR stuff and seeing how we can actually apply it. And I think that's really what's going to up this industry, is if we, again, you don't have to do the code, but if you understand the foundations to then apply it to whatever tool that you're actually using, I think it's really going to help. Okay. And I mean, you can check out my resources, learningdojo.net. I'll be creating more there, and more templates and stuff. I'm a tool person, so I like to create different tools and share the code and everything. So it's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I like this whole shadow. Yeah,
little sun dots coming in right there. The sun's moving on you. So you got to adjust to the sun.
Well, keep moving.
Yeah. So, but I think, I think like we talked about before, though. I mean, I think it's we're really competing, right? The content that we're creating for learning, we are really competing against these high-level, newer technologies that are out there. And if we don't figure out how to learn them, nobody's going to be wanting to take our courses, and no one's going to be wanting to learn from us. And no matter how instructionally fantastic the work is that we do, if it's not at the level of what people are used to seeing from a digital perspective, they're not gonna consume it. So we do have to stay up to date on all these things.
Yeah, if they go and they work with like an application, an app that they love, and it's mind blowing, and then they go to one of our e-learning courses and it's a little animation that slides up, which is nothing wrong with that, but there's just a difference if we're not at the same level, at least. Or if we're not even able to create learning in the locations that people are actually at, instead of forcing them all back to this one location, I think we need to be in those locations and have the learning in those areas. I think this industry will suffer until we're able to do that, until we're able to figure out how do we take in the environment where the learner is at, how do we take that, and how do we apply learning to that, and how do we enhance that and train people in those environments. And that's why we haven't talked much about it right now, but learning XAPI, or just Melissa talked a lot about it, just putting XAPI or tracking analytics inside of the actual tool, I think would drastically give us more insights of how we can improve stuff. And
no, it's perfect. I think you're absolutely right, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that kind of stuff. So XAPI is a huge one, and all of these new technologies, it's definitely something that we've got on our radar for sure. And we're going to be having a lot more of those conversations as we move along. So again, that's why we have people like you on the show as a guest. So I appreciate you hanging out with us today, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Been trying to avoid this.
There you go. Yeah, where can everybody find you besides your website? So learningdojo.net. What else? Twitter handle or email that you want to share? Or?
Yeah, Jeff Batt01 is my Twitter handle. Jeff@learningdojo.net is my email. Learningdojo.net also has a contact form. You can do that. If you just search Jeff Batt on Udemy, you can find other courses there. Although I wouldn't go to Udemy right now because my same courses are on my website for free, and Udemy's not free.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, go get the free ones. Yeah, sure. For sure.
Yeah. Get the free
All right,
ones.
man. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us today. This was fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time. All right, I'm gonna close out your video, but you'll still be here and be able to chat with everybody in the chat window for those folks who may have questions or want to reach out to you. Okay. All right. Cool. Yep. Okay. Have a great day.
Good. Thanks.
TLDChat on a Monday where we talk about you. I hope a lot of you will take this conversation to heart. And, you know, if you're not a technical person, if you're not a coder, you know, reach out to some of these folks like Jeff or like Irby or Joe Gonchi, the magician of Articulate and Captivate and all that cool stuff out there. A master instructor in those areas. You can reach out to Joe. You know, our community is just filled with folks who can point you in the right direction and share knowledge with you. So I would encourage you all to do that and, you know, and take a look at their work and have them point you to their websites like Learning Dojo and other locations where you can, you know, up your game, raise your bar, right? All the different ways that we talk about getting better at the work of training and learning and development. So I'm glad you guys are all here. I'm really glad that you're a part of the community. Be sure to hit up the website and consider a membership, and also take a look at the event coming up and in January. And also just take a look at the website. All this week, we have guests all week long. I think this is the very first time that we've packed TLDChat Monday through Friday with all guests. So no open forums this week. Just fantastic guests like Jeff, all lined up, and it's going to be a great time. But anyways, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and putting up with my strange shaky camera and the weird background and everything. I'll try to get it cleaned up a little bit for tomorrow, but we'll, you know, when I'm on the road, this is about as good as it gets. So I was just totally psyched to get to be here with Jeff, you know, even in this format. So anyways, thanks everybody. It's been fantastic. Always appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and tell all your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 4 p.m. UK time. Take care, everybody.